Welcome to another episode of DFS and Dynasty brought to you by Eat Sleep Fantasy. Steve, we got to jump right into this. How excited are you, man? It's week 15. We got championships coming. We got DFS, Dynasties in full swing. I know we're getting close to Christmas time, but I feel like Santa Claus right now. I am crazy happy. I am pumped up. How you feeling, brother?
Dude, I'm feeling pretty damn good too, man. We've already had games on Thursday. We had games yesterday, although, that'll be the end of Thursday night football. I still have 3 teams in a playoff hunt right now, and all 3 of them have really good chances to win and put me in a position to win even more money than I've been making in DFS all year. So, dude, I'm pretty pumped. I can't wait. I hope Santa Claus comes early.
Man, I tell you what, it's been one of the most up and down fantasy weeks that I can ever remember. With all these major injuries and, Kareem Hunt, OBJ, Melvin Gordon, James Conner, AJ Green, you can keep going. And there's several leagues where I have a lot of those guys. And then there's a few leagues where I'm playing against teams that have all of those guys. Hashtag Burrito. And so it's a fun time. We want to make fantasy seem like it's all skill. However, there's definitely luck and chance that's involved in it. Keenan Allen was an amazing play this week. Should have just went off, but he goes out early on in the game, put up a big goose egg. Lamar Miller should have had plenty of rushing attempts and a decent play, not a good play. He'll never be a good play, but he gets 0.8 points. And these things are going to happen, and hopefully you have the depth to where you can overcome that. So couple things. We're going to be going over weather, news and notes, Vegas odds, DFS plays, value plays. Man, we got any questions, or I guess we got the answers. You got the questions. Anything that you guys need, we are here for you. We're going to be making some money. Now, couple announcements. We usually put our stuff up on YouTube, wherever you're watching this, whether it's on Twitter or on your podcast app, whatever. We are going to be going live on Periscope next Sunday. We're going to jump over to the Twitter sphere. So if you have not already followed us, you can follow us. It's one of the easiest Twitter handles out there. At ESFDD, so Eat Sleep Fantasy, Dynasty, and DFS, or DFS and Dynasty if you're not dyslexic like me. So at ESFDD. So make sure you do that, because the same time next week, I know it's championship week, so a lot of you guys should still be playing, but we're also going to be going over all DFS stuff there. We still have 5 weeks of DFS to make money on, so this is nothing new. But without further ado, Steve, let's jump straight into the weather. We're getting mid-December. There's going to be some games affected. So which games do we need to watch out for?
So there are a few. Before I get into that, though, I just want to kind of piggyback on what you just said. I know this is DFS and Dynasty, and we've talked a lot about DFS purposes here, but, this is fantasy playoff implications here. So by all means, ask us all those questions. And as usual, as we've said many a times when we talk about going to eatsleepfantasy.com and subscribing and purchasing lineups that we're selling that are going all the way through the Super Bowl, we're going to get back into the the Dynasty episodes a little bit more once the fantasy season is over after week 16. So you'll get more of the Dynasty aspect, and you'll still get the DFS info, the lineups, and then our live show on Sundays all the way through the Super Bowl.
Right.
So with the weather, let's look at the Bucs and the Ravens. And it's been raining there, man. It's getting pretty sloppy. They had the tarp over the field. They actually had rollers going over the top trying to keep the field down and keep it a little less sloppy. But I don't know. It's going to be interesting if it stays wet, like most games. If there's a lot of snow, a lot of rain, it could be more of a ground game than anything else.
Which already goes into the Ravens' favor.
Yeah, exactly. Especially with the way that Lamar Jackson's been playing and he's implemented. Dixon's looked good, which he always does if he's healthy. You still have Gus the Bus as well. And that won't bode well for the Bucs because they don't have much of a run game and they're playing against this defense. So another game to look at is the Seahawks at the 49ers. The winds are around 15 miles an hour. It could affect passing and special teams, but, that's more so if you're getting downfield a lot. And I don't know how much that's going to impact the 49ers side
Yeah,
of the
Mullins
ball.
doesn't have an arm. Almost
Right.
all of his big plays, everything's close to the line within 15 yards. Slants to Pettis, and Kittle just does what he does. Now it's a little bit different on the other side, however, with Lockett and Wilson, because he will air it out, even though he only throws it 5 times a game. Whenever he does throw it, it's usually downfield.
Yeah. So I mean, if you have players on the Seattle side of the ball, you're kind of happy to see that. So that's just something to look forward to in that game. And then the Lions at the Bills. It's cold and wet there, but really not too much. It's nothing crazy. So you're still looking at some players that if you're streaming, let's say Foster, Zay Jones, or if you're getting crazy and you're streaming Josh Allen.
I don't mind it this week. I really, really don't.
Yeah, I don't either. Not one bit.
I love how they added 1.5 points to their spread, and they are still not at 40 points. So 39.5 points for Detroit at Buffalo. And it just seems like everybody is injured in this game. We'll go over some news and notes and who's in and who's out and all that stuff. But just a reminder, too, if you are one of the people that have purchased our lineups on eatsleepfantasy.com, head over there if you haven't already. It's only $25 for the rest of the year. That's going all the way up through the Super Bowl. We cover all different daily fantasy sports sites, pick'ems, multiple lineups, 50-50s, head-to-heads, tournaments. We multiple options for each one. And if you do sign up now, you get a free bronze membership to eatsleepfantasy.com, which is good all year. Lots of fantasy nuggets, Facebook group, all kinds of different stuff. So make sure you head over there, eatsleepfantasy.com, and we will be updating those lineups all the way until kickoff. So if we have somebody in there, let's say it's Jalen Samuels, who's a big one right now, incredible value on both sites. However, James Conner is a game time decision. So, just a real quick nugget. If you have already filled out your lineups, make sure you put Jalen Samuels in the flex spot, not in the running back spot, which you should be using 3 running backs. Not 4 wide receivers if you're on FanDuel or DraftKings, whatever. Almost every single millionaire maker lineup has had a running back in the flex except for 2, and they were both tight ends. So they have yet to have a winning millionaire lineup with a wide receiver in the flex spot. But anyway, back to the whole Jalen Samuels thing. If he can't go and if he's in your flex spot, it just gives you more options to sub him out because you could possibly put in somebody, a wide receiver or something. I'm looking at Matt Breida. If for some reason James Conner goes on FanDuel, he's only $200 more. So I've manipulated my lineups to leave myself that additional $200 so I can get him in there. It's looking like Matt Breida will go. But anyway, head over there, eatsleepfantasy.com.
Breida is supposed to go, but a lot of reports are surfacing that James Conner is doubtful and he's likely to return week 16. So you could probably start Jalen Samuels with some confidence this week. But we already have one question too. It says full PPR. I'm assuming it's James White. It says White or Aaron Jones. Who do you got going, John?
Well, if we look at what Vegas is telling us, the number one projected scoring game on the main slate is New England at Pittsburgh. And the game script tells us James White's going to be the guy in that backfield. Sony Michel's been completely subbed out because of freaking Devlin sniping 3 touchdowns over the last 2 weeks. But Pittsburgh's going to be airing the ball out. And there's a great chance this New England defense, which has looked suspect at best on the road, it's going to be a high-scoring game. And if that's the case, it's going to be a whole lot of James White. Now, I get Aaron Jones. I completely understand all of the logic behind, let's stay with this guy. But for me, I really do think, especially in a full PPR, I am going with the easy matchup against this Pittsburgh defense that gives up a lot of catches to the running back position, as opposed to Aaron Jones is playing against the Chicago defense. And we have seen what they can do.
Soldier Field, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it's Green Bay is projected at 20 points, whereas New England's at 29. So that's the Vegas projection point totals. And so I want to go with that. And especially in a full PPR, James White is definitely the safer play for me. He's got a much higher floor. What do you think, Steve?
Yeah, in a full PPR, I would definitely go down that road. Just because I don't like Jones's matchup with the Bears, and there's just been too many inconsistencies in Green Bay throughout the entire year, even, before and after Mike McCarthy. So, yeah, I don't know. And I just want to correct myself here. The game is in Green Bay, but still, that doesn't really do anything for me.
No, it's not. It's
that
not.
that Chicago defense is, they're legit, man. I mean, their whole front, they just create a ton of pressure. They force quarterbacks into making decisions. They disrupt the ground game. And, that just allows cornerbacks to just kind of sit back and just kind of jump on routes. So, that front presents a lot of problems. And yes, Aaron Rodgers is mobile and he's a creator and all that stuff. And he was the reason why they beat Chicago earlier in the year. But I don't know. I don't see a good game for Green Bay this week. Unfortunate for me, because I have Devontae Adams in some playoff games.
I think Devontae will still get his just because of the volume. But just to say, I'm looking at one of my Dynasty rosters where I'm in the playoffs right now. I have James White in over Elijah McGuire and Matt Breida. And this was before, McGuire, he put up 12.6 and a half point. That's what this league is. But I still would take James White. I think that his floor is right at 10 points. And who knows if he gets going. Sometimes they leave him in on goal line situations. If he can get a touchdown, you're talking about an RB1. I just think he's safer. So that's where I'm at on that.
Okay. We got a couple more questions here then too. So with this come from the same person. So we're going White now. Who would you go, Aaron Jones or David Johnson against Atlanta?
I think this is, if there is a week, that David Johnson is going to go off, it's got to be this week. Playing against this Atlanta defense that's garbage. And I understand you said full PPR, that's going to affect the way in which I see it, because if you look at what David Johnson did last week, he did put up a lot of fantasy points. However, his volume was legit. Because, I mean, the funny thing is, we talk about how bad David Johnson is. He's the number 11 fantasy running back in half-point PPR. He put up 10.1 points last week, but he had 8 catches. So whenever you have somebody that has that much volume in a PPR, you're talking about a guy that has double-digit points as a fantasy floor. And this Atlanta defense is awful. I get they got Deion Jones back. It hasn't seemed to help them. It's possible the coaches could be losing their jobs. I mean, there's a chance that Atlanta could get the first overall pick if they lose out. They own almost all the tiebreakers. Like, they are a trash team. So, this, I don't think it's going to be a high scoring game, but the volume says David Johnson here.
I would go David Johnson too against that defense, especially, like you already talked about with the volume, but I think there's a really good chance that he can get a touchdown today as well, because, they should be able to chunk yards out, 3 to 5 at a time, even with Rosen and the way they've been playing. I mean, they went into Green Bay and won. Why can't they beat the Falcons,
Yeah.
So, one more question before we get into the news and notes. We got to pick 2 guys, standard format: Leonard Fournette, Brandon Cooks, Devontae Adams, Jalen Samuels.
So Leonard Fournette is the must go for me. I do think that he could be the number 1 scoring running back this week. Very, very high on Leonard Fournette. So for me, he is the absolute automatic. Now, next up, I think I would probably is Dalvin Cook, Jalen Samuels, and Devontae Adams. Is that correct?
Yeah, Fournette, Cooks, Adams, Samuels, correct.
Gosh. Man, the question marks with the Vikings offense, they fired their DeFilippo, their offensive coordinator, and I'm going to stay away from that situation just because you have 2 other A-plus type of options. The problem is Samuels is playing in the late game, whereas Green Bay is the early game, and that's going to tip it for me. Go with the guy that got you there. Don't risk it. I'm going Devontae Adams here just because, in the slight chance, if James Conner does play, because I do think those 2 options are relatively close, but the touchdown upside with Devontae Adams, I mean, he's a top 3 fantasy option this whole season, and he has produced no matter who they have played. So for me, I'm going Fournette and Devontae Adams.
That's what I would do too. I mean, granted, Green Bay has a tough matchup, as we just talked about, and I have my concerns with Adams, but I also really haven't seen anybody be able to contain him this year, and he's faced some good matchups. So I would definitely roll with those 2 as well.
Some people are matchup proof. Now, I don't
Yeah.
think he could be the number one wide receiver, but let's just say Green Bay falls into an early hole like what we saw earlier in the year versus Chicago. I think it was week 1, was it? Week 1 or week 2?
Yeah.
And then Aaron's got to throw nonstop to get there. And
Yep.
it doesn't matter if Devontae Adams is covered, probably the best back shoulder fade thrower in the history of the NFL with Devontae Adams. It doesn't matter if he's blanketed. Rodgers going to get him the ball, especially in the red zone.
Right. Now, this other question that we have kind of rolls into the start of our news and notes. So, it's asking if you're going to go Andrew Luck or Big Ben. Now, Ben Roethlisberger has cracked ribs, and their season's kind of on the line against New England. He's going to play. And, as I said before, a lot of reports are surfacing, and he's there that Connor's going to be doubtful. So I see the ball for both teams just flying all over the field. Andrew Luck has been super consistent all year, regardless of his matchup, and he's playing Dallas. And Dallas is a tough matchup. And Ty, he's dealing with an ankle injury, but he's expected to go. I don't know. It's kind of tough. I'm almost leaning towards Ben on this one, as much as I like Andrew Luck. But again, that Dallas defense is tough.
Yeah, for me, it's Ben Roethlisberger. I don't think it's close. I do like Andrew Luck, but as you said, that defense is for real. And the New England defense is absolutely garbage. And then you add into the fact James Conner might not even play, which means he's going to be throwing the ball even more. So we saw this last week. Yeah, Ben Roethlisberger, for me, he's the highest priced quarterback for the main slate on FanDuel at 8,600. I absolutely love Big Ben this week. I think he is even worth paying up for, just because this defense is awful for New England, and they don't run the ball near as much as they want to, or as they used to. They're gunning it a little more. I say gunning it. They're all short dink and dunk throws. A couple deep throws last week from Tom Brady. But this game has the billing, and Vegas agrees with me here, that it's going to be a shootout. Primetime game, not primetime, but it's them or San Francisco. They're going to be on every TV in the United States besides mine. They'll be on one of my smaller TV. The 49ers get the big one, even though they're probably not going to have a great game. But this is going to be a shootout, and Big Ben shows up at home in big time games. And this is it. And for both teams, they have to win it. If we look at the playoff seedings right now, the first and second seed, they don't have the Patriots in there. The Patriots are not the first or second seed. They're going to have to win out if they want that bye week and if they want home games, which they do. So this is huge for the Steelers, because if they lose, they're still winning their division, but they don't have a lot of room there. So this is going to be a fun game, very playoff atmosphere type of game. Pretty excited to see how this one's going to shake out.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's going to be pretty intense. I have zero problem starting any of those guys. I do kind of like Jalen Samuels this week and Juju Smith-Schuster, probably more so than Antonio Brown, but that could probably prove me wrong. Who knows? Matt Breida, like we already kind of talked about a little bit, he's expected to play, and your boy Dante Pettis is going to play. He popped up on the injury report, but he's going to play. I kind of like his matchup against Seattle.
Man, yeah, this was, his 2 touchdown game, in trash time last 2 weeks ago. I hate that they just played 2 weeks ago, but it's kind of what it is. Dante Pettis, he is the number 1 wide receiver on this offense. And when you look at, he's basically game slate independent. And what I mean by that is, or game script independent. If the game's close, then that means he's involved. We saw this last week. Mm-hmm. If the game's a blowout, then he's super involved. We saw that 2 weeks ago. Nick Mullins threw for 400 yards 2 weeks ago. Like, they are airing the ball out. So I absolutely don't have a problem with Pettis at all anywhere in your lineup. I am starting him in a few different dynasty leagues because of all those injuries. I had Odell Beckham in a league, and whenever he got announced out, I just moved Pettis right into that lineup. His targets aren't amazing. However, he's such a big play. He could take a slant to the house with the best of them. He's got 4 touchdowns in the past 3 games. Love me some Pettis. And then if you look at Breida, he is a guy that doesn't need a lot of volume, in order to be successful. He is near the top as far as yards per carry goes for the entire NFL, and he's pretty cheap. That's the thing. So Jalen Samuels is kind of the guy that I'm comparing him to. Jalen Samuels 5,500, Matt Breida is 5,800. I would prefer Jalen Samuels, but Breida is not a bad option to go at all.
Yeah, and I'm actually glad to see those reports because in one of my playoff teams right now, like I have I've had injuries with Breida and Kerryon Johnson, and I've been rolling with Christian McCaffrey and Sony Michel over the last few weeks. But if Breida's going to play, I might be starting him over Michel. To be perfectly honest with you, because you can run on Seattle, and he has receiving capabilities as well. So, and just the fact that Devlin has been sniping touchdowns, and there's you have 4 running backs in that backfield right now, as opposed to when Michel was tearing it up. It was basically just him and James White. So yeah, I'm definitely going to look into that. So LaShawn McCoy hamstring issue left last week's game, really hurt me in DFS because, with his cost and matchup, I was really relying on him. Him and Chris Ivory with a shoulder, they're both a game time decision.
And, we're losing them. We're losing Steve. Come on, man.
Sorry, lump in the throat there. But anyways, Chris Ivory, shoulder, they're both a game time decision. Now, if both of them are out, Marcus Murphy could be a decent streaming option versus the Lions. I mean, Josh Allen has clearly been the quarterback and the running back in Buffalo, but Marcus Murphy has that receiving dimension to him as well. So I don't know. He could be a flyer.
How crazy is this that we are in the fantasy semifinals, week 15, and we're sitting here saying, yeah, Marcus Murphy. Like this is this year in a nutshell. And he's only 4,500 on FanDuel, and I have no problem getting him in there because what's he got to do to hit value? 7 points. If he gets 7 points, he hit value, and he's returning his investment. That's going to allow you to stock up at a lot of other positions, which I advise this week. If we look at the main slate and you look at those running backs at the top of the list, we've got our big 2, really big 3 this week, and Ezekiel Elliott's Barkley, who's been just unreal, and Leonard Fournette. I would put him up there in that main slate as well. And I love pairing 2 of those with a cheaper price in my flex, whether that's Jalen Samuels or Marcus Murphy. But again, you've got to be refreshing the news because if Ivory or LaShawn plays, he is not an option. If either one of those guys are active, he is not an option. Only
right, exactly. Right. So moving on from that now, Carson Wentz. Bad news for him. They've been actually doing CT scans on him all season, and they discovered a fracture in his back. Now, they're saying he's not going to need surgery, but it's most likely he's going to be shut down for the season. Now, enter Nick Foles. Kind of a repeat of last year almost, right? However, Eagles aren't in the position that they were in last year, and there's a little more game film on their situation with Nick Foles, and they don't have LeGarrette Blount in the backfield either, so it's a little bit different. Now, Foles, he's 29. He's a free agent after this year, so this is kind of a good opportunity for him to kind of go out and do something. Now, whether he stays in Philly to be a backup or not, or if he's going to move on, try and be a starter on some garbage team somewhere, he could fall into the Jameis Winston Fitzpatrick mold over there in Tampa Bay. Who the hell knows? But, it's an opportunity for him, and it's a shame. This is 2 years in a row seeing Carson Wentz go down. The guy he's a very good talent. I think he has all the potential in the world to be a very good NFL quarterback. But man, his health concerns, he is not off to a good start.
Yeah, and that's the thing. This isn't a main slate game. This is the Sunday night football game. He's 6,000. He's super cheap on FanDuel. You could definitely get him in there. He's definitely the cheapest option at starting quarterback. But what's his value going to be playing against the Rams? How do you want to do that? I'm not sure. I think there's better options just because this entire offense has just looked beyond inept. And the Rams continue to play better and better. So Philly's at a 20-point projected point total by Vegas. That's not something I really want to bet on, even at $6,000, not with the other options of people like Big Ben. Dak Prescott's a good play this week. I actually really do like, this is kind of weird, but for the Vikings, man, I think Kirk Cousins, it's not a primetime game. He's at home playing against Miami. I think they're going to air it out over there. I just think that's kind of what they're going to do. So I'm having a hard time finding a way in which, okay, I want to get this guy in my lineups. I don't see it. The people that I do think it benefits, though, is Golden Tate. When Carson Wentz is in there, he targets the tight end. It's just who he has always been. But if you look at, now I'm getting what Steve got. If you look at what happened when Nick Foles came in last year, he was throwing the ball to the slot like crazy at a much higher rate than Carson Wentz was. So I think this helps Golden Tate, and I think that he could be having one of his better games of the year this week. So I'm a big Golden Tate guy this week.
Golden Tate, his golden taint. So, just real quick, and we'll move on to the Vegas games and all that. But, T.Y. Hilton, we already kind of talked about his situation a little bit, dealing with an ankle injury. He really hasn't practiced all week, but, they're saying he has a good shot to play. It's kind of the same thing last week, and he came out and tore it up too. So, for a guy that's not a very big receiver, he's a pretty tough guy, and I have a lot of respect for T.Y. Hilton. And, if they're saying he has a good shot to play, I believe he'll probably be in there and a guy you're going to want to play, even though it is a tough matchup. So, real quick, I was looking at the questions out here, man. Rick, you're cracking me up, man. This guy, he's talking a lot about the Skins Jacksonville game.
Why?
Well, he's just saying, looking at Adrian Peterson against Jacksonville, kind of like what Derrick Henry did, I'm assuming, based on how it was written in there. Looking at D.D. Westbrook, I like D.D. Westbrook possibly this week. If you're looking for a cheap guy in DFS play on DraftKings, I kind of like D.D. And then he's saying Fournette is going to get shut down. What do you think about that?
If you want to take that approach, that's fine. And that is quite possible. We've seen a couple bad games where they have, just completely targeted what was going on there. But Washington and that defense, it has not been what they thought it was going to be. I think that this is a team, they came out today saying they're not sure Jake Gruden's going to be the coach of next year.
Yep.
They were 6-2, and their stupid front office chose not to go after quarterbacks that could have helped their playoff chances just because of political issues. The same team that has no problem going out and getting guys that hit women. They don't care about that. And I'm telling you right now, if you watch them on the field, I get Joe Johnson looked whatever. They look like a team that has quit. They're playing behind. I think they have 4 starters on their offensive line are out. I'm not seeing it for Washington. And if that's the case, it's 36 point over under, the lowest point spread of any game this week by far. And then on top of that, if we're going to play into the game script that would benefit, Fournette the most, it's going to be a close game where he can just continue to run the ball like crazy. And I do not think that Washington is capable of stopping them. I just don't see it. Now, I don't think it's going to be a high-scoring game, like I said, but I could totally see Leonard Fournette leading the NFL in touches this week and having 30-plus touches. Something like 24 carries for 6 targets, something like that. I just think that feeds into what they're trying to do. These are 2 teams that have bad quarterbacks. And Cody Kessler and Josh Johnson. Now, the one thing that I will say about Adrian Peterson, Josh Johnson will open up some lanes for him. But what are the chances Josh Johnson finishes this game? If he goes out there and throws an interception or 2, do you think they're going to stick with him? Do you go back to Sanchez? What do you do there? This is going to be an ugly game. I don't know. I could see 17-13. It just kind of makes sense. But the volume, always go with volume. I would be willing to take a bet.
Well,
I would take Fournette over AP. What's up?
Look what Saquon did to him.
Yeah, exactly. Saquon just murdered them. I understand they're 2 different backs, but Washington's not playing for anything. They don't care. They have given up based on their front office and their coaching staff. This is a team that doesn't want to play anymore.
So, I want to see, I'm refreshing RotoWorld and NFL.com. I want to see it officially come across, but Austin just dropped in our notes that McCoy is out today.
So now the next apple to fall there is Chris Ivory. We see Ivory go, then We are good. And actually, I just got a question on Twitter. Ian Thomas or Evan Ingram full PPR? Steve, which one would you go with there?
Oh, man. That's kind of tough because Thomas has been getting volume, and then you have OBJ out over there in New York. And, as anticipated and we talked about, Ingram got a little uptick. Damn.
Did he?
I don't know.
How did he do last week, right?
He didn't do too bad last week. He didn't do too bad. I don't remember statistically, but I remember going back and looking, and it was a little bit more than what he had been seeing.
He had 3 catches for 77 yards last week. Evan Ingram did.
How many targets did he have though?
5 targets.
Yeah. See, there's some games that he hadn't even been seeing that.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I just think with the touchdown upside, I almost want to lean Ingram on that one. I don't know. That's kind of a tough one, but because there's such a small dose with Ian Thomas, and we know that Cam Newton likes to throw to the tight end. He's had a hell of a chemistry with Olsen, and I'm dying over here again. But yeah, and that's kind of a tough matchup because New Orleans defense has been playing well as of late. So I don't know. I'm kind of leaning away from that one, and I would probably go Ingram.
Man, Ian Thomas, 11 targets, 9 catches, 77 yards last week. And so here's what I would say. And I think that we both are right. It depends on what your philosophy is in building a lineup. Me, I always punt the tight end position unless I can help it. So I am going for high floor, not high ceiling. And it depends on what you're doing, right? If you are in let's say you're playing a tournament on FanDuel DraftKings, Evan Ingram's a better play. If you're playing cash, I think Ian Thomas is safer, and he's cheaper as well. So what are you trying to gain? There's a chance, Evan Ingram could go off, but there's also a chance he gets 2 targets like he did last week or 2 weeks ago. I don't want that. I want volume so that I'm not laying a goose egg. And so that's why I'm going Ian Thomas. But again, I totally understand your logic, Steve, and what you're trying to do there.
Yeah. So here's another question then. Half PPR. Are you going Randall Cobb, Mark Ingram, or Chris Thompson? Yeah.
I hate this, man.
Grind those gears over there.
Come on. You said full PPR?
Half PPR. Half
PPR? I think I'm going Melvin Ingram. I'm sorry. I do this
Mark
every
Ingram?
time. Mark Ingram.
You love Melvin Ingram. You have like a love for him.
Dyslexia strikes again. God dang it.
You think he has a golden taint?
Yeah, he does. I'd go Mark Ingram here. He's just safer from volume standpoint. Again, Cobb had the big play last week, but again, we've talked about this Bears defense. He's going to have Kendall Fuller all up in his grill if he's going out of the slot. I hate that matchup for Cobb. I don't want to do anything. And Cobb's one of those plays.
Chris Thompson out in the field too,
and he's sick, so that's the thing. He missed practice. He's got an undisclosed illness. We've seen so much time he's missed this year, and if Joe Johnson's out there, yikes, man. So as far as floor and ceiling, I'm going Mark Ingram here. I think it's just the safer play. You drafted him and you waited for 4 weeks to get this guy, or you traded for him and you were smart. Get him in your lineup. Even if you look at his dud games of, he put up 3.8 against Dallas a few weeks ago, but he had 3 targets and 7 rushing attempts. So that's his floor is 10 touches. But I think that he's somebody that's going to get you double-digit fantasy points. And I like this matchup this week against Carolina. They're not playing very, very well defensively. So I'm going Mark Ingram.
Yeah, I would too. And it's funny, Griffin, the gentleman who put that question on there, he goes, Ingram's a scary start, but I'll go for it. Thanks. Hey, I don't disagree with him. It is a scary start, but
this is week 15. It's scary out there, man.
Right. But over Randall Cobb and Chris Thompson, man, it's just, I don't know. And with the receiving capabilities that Ingram and Kamara have, the fact that Carolina is pretty weak in the back half of their defense, you almost have to go with it. Now another guy, he goes, here's a question. He goes, as crazy as it sounds, and doesn't have the format on here, but are you going Mike Evans against the Ravens, which we already talked about the weather, or Curtis Samuel against the Saints?
Oh, Mike Evans.
You would still go Mike Evans?
Yeah, I'm going Mike Evans. Yeah.
I don't know. I'd probably go Curtis Samuel.
But that's the thing. If you look at what Curtis Samuel has done, his volume
is trash. It's touchdown dependent. It really is. But man, the way that offense operates, he's almost been like in recent weeks, almost like Tyler Lockett, touchdown dependent, low volume. He can get you a couple catches, a lot of yards, and a touchdown.
Just the volume alone, though, for Mike Evans, like he does not have to have a good matchup to get points. The only way that they are going to be active in this game, Tampa Bay, I'm talking about going against Baltimore, is if they throw the ball to Mike Evans, and they're going to have to. If you look at Curtis Samuel, he's had 2 good weeks of volume, but before that, 2 targets, 1 target, 4 targets, 3 targets, 0 targets. No, man. Like
all right. I would say Mike Evans now. He just came across and go. He said he's down 25 points, and Mahomes and Hill kind of screwed him over. Only got a 28 combined, and he needs a big play, and it is a PPR format. So in that circumstance with PPR, I would probably switch to Evans, though.
I'll tell you this: I don't know if this matters or not. Shout out to Jay out there if he's listening. Last week, week 15, is when Mike Evans had his best game of the entire year and put up 30-something fantasy points and a lot of upsets. And I remember this question last year. People were like, Mike Evans been terrible. He goes out and just holds 100 yards, 2 touchdown game. Not that that matters, saying, week 15, he's going to show up. But there's a chance with Evans, man. You drafted him in the first 2 rounds. If you got him in the 3rd round, good job. But you've got to play with that. You got to keep him in there. Jameis is still playing. They're going to air it out. They have no run game. Yeah, you got to play him.
All right. So, all right, let's look at Vegas games and suggested targets. Now, we've already kind of talked about the Patriots and Steelers and the Packers and Bears a little bit. And we've even talked about the Cowboys and Colts a little bit. But let's talk about that game. Dak Prescott, he's almost a viable start. Even if you're sitting in the playoffs right now, and let's say you have Prescott and Carson Wentz on your team, and then in DFS he's 7,300, Zeke's 8,800. He's probably going to see a ton of volume this week. Amari Cooper on DFS is still 6,600, given on how well he's played the last couple of weeks. So, and then going to the Colts side of the ball, Andrew Luck, he's been super consistent. He's 8,100. Ty, we've already talked about his situation. He's 7,900. And then Ebron, and even Mo Alley Cox, who I actually have as one of our emergency starts, you almost have to look at those guys. Ebron's going to get the volume, but they utilize that tight end position a ton in the red zone. So, those are a lot of players right there that could do well for you in DFS and could really do well for you during your fantasy playoffs. Where do you stand on any of that?
Yeah, I love Dak this week, and I hate to say that just because I hate Dak. But no, it makes total sense. And a lot of it has to do with his, rushing potential. He's leading the NFL in rushing touchdowns for quarterback. Him and Josh Allen are tied with 5. That's huge in and of itself. But since they traded for Amari Cooper, they are throwing the ball to 2 people on this offense. One is Amari Cooper, and really the number 1 should have been is Zeke. Zeke's target share is insane. Yep. They have come out and just thrown it to him like crazy. What were his numbers last week? This guy just came out and just totally crushed it. He needs to be in almost all your lineups. We talked about it last week, and I think it was you or Austin that said, I don't know about Zeke this week. But if you look at his last 5 fantasy games, 33, 29, 22, 22, 25 fantasy points. He had 12 catches. That's not going to change. I don't think he'll get 12 catches, but the high volume in the passing game, he just has to get about 6 catches to return value. So, and as long as these 2 guys are putting up value, I have no problem with the all-out Cowboys stack this week of Zeke, Dak, and Amari Cooper. They're playing better football.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that whatsoever. And even though against the Colts, the Colts with Darius Leonard, they get pressure. They stop the run. They're pretty respectable in that aspect. But, Amari Cooper has been able to spread that field. And the fact that Zeke, his target volume, his target share, and the fact that it's been going up and his capability of even handling that, it changes the entire scope of their offense and the way that Dak can use his legs. And then even, last week they got Blake Jarwin involved. in the offense. I think he saw like 7 targets or something like that last week. So there's some things happening over there in Dallas, and a lot of it hinges on what Amari Cooper's been able to bring to the table, which was total surprise to me. I was one of the guys that was against that trade and didn't think it was going to pan out well, considering that, Cooper was going from running routes for Derek Carr to Dak Prescott. We've been down on big time, but they've proved me wrong, and it's done major things for that offense.
5 straight games since that trade, which is man, I hate the Cowboys, but it's what it is, and you got to give them props.
Make weight on that one. Screw the Cowboys down.
And they don't listen.
They don't. I hate them.
Anyway, all right. So let's jump to another game. Let's do one more game that you kind of whether like or hate for whatever reason, and walk us through that, Steve. So pick one more game and let's break that one down.
All right. Well, let's see here. Let's look at from a point standpoint. Let's look at New Orleans and Carolina, even though it's Monday night. For those that are going to be playing that slate, let's get one of those games involved.
I like it. So, if we're just looking at the over-under and all those things, right, this is a 50.5 point over-under. And right now, the road team, the Saints, are favored by 6 points. Okay, so they get 6 points and they're on the road, but a projected point total for the Saints at 28 and 22 for Carolina based on all the Vegas betting lines. Walk us through who you hate and who you love.
I've always been against Drew Brees on the road, outdoors. I've been vocal about it many times, and he's had some decent games, but not Drew Brees-like games, right? And I'm going to be against it even more this week because I don't have Alvin Kamara in any of my playoff teams, and I'm facing him and Drew Brees in the teams that I still have playoff teams. So I really want them to do bad. So I really hate them this week, and I really hope that they play terrible. Sorry for anybody that needs them, but I'm going to be selfish on this one. But I mean, as expected, I think Michael Thomas is going to see a lot of targets. Depending on game flow, Kamara and Ingram could very well be heavily used in this game. Now, Carolina has been on a huge skid. Seen some conversations, reports with Cam Newton saying how he can't wait for this matchup because, they need a big win. This is a divisional win. They're losing games that they shouldn't be losing, especially with the amount of talent that they have. So, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that Cam's going to have a big day today. I think he's going to have a big day. I think Christian McCaffrey's going to do what Christian McCaffrey's been doing. And then it's just going to be a matter of how the other guys fall into place because with the capabilities that Samuels has, that DJ Moore has, even Funchess got a little bit more involved last week. He caught a touchdown pass, but there's a lot there for them to disrupt how well the Saints defense has been playing. So I'm not big on a lot of the Saints players on the road, except for the guys out of the backfield and obviously Michael Thomas. But then I like a lot of the Carolina Panthers this week, especially if they're going in there. They want to play and they want to win and they still want to try and make a playoff run and win a big divisional game.
They're a half game out of the playoffs right now. Them in Minnesota, they're there. And I love how you talked about Breeze on the road. And so I wanted to look it up while you were talking. These are his last road fantasy outputs, okay? 14 points, 8 points. Then he had a big one, 28 points at Cincinnati. And then after that, 7, 16, and 8 points. So you're talking about one quality start out of his last 6.
Yeah, that was against Cincinnati.
So that tells me, back to the question earlier, if they're going to have success, it's going to be in the run game. So you're talking Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara, which makes sense because, again, this defense for Carolina is decent, don't get me wrong, but their pass rush is non-existent. And they do not maintain running lanes. And what I mean by that is they try to blitz, but it doesn't work too well. Their 2 interior guys are exceptional, but outside of that, you can run on the perimeter against this team fairly easily. Mark Ingram, I'm liking that one even more, almost as much as Melvin Ingram. All right.
Well, yeah, Mark Ingram hopefully will get more yards than Melvin Ingram coming around the edge.
There you go.
So even though they already played, so
that was on purpose. I
right.
love it when my mentions say you mispronounce his name. We know he is fictitious. All right, let's go to emergency value plays of the week, and I love it when you and Austin put this together. You guys know your stuff. This is for all our DFS guys. You get bad news late and your position, you're scrambling, you don't know what to do. You got to get somebody in there, and you have 5 minutes or less to sub this player out on your roster for FanDuel or whatever. What guys kind of stick out to you that are cheap that you can sub last minute?
So I like Nick Mullins this week. They're at home, they're against Seattle. He's going to have Pettis. He's going to have Breida back. George Kittle's been absolutely amazing. He's only $6,600. So, I did beat yours and Austin's ass in our.
We got to give you a shout out there
with your boy Nick Mullins. I thought for sure you were going to start him too.
It's not cool, man. That's equivalent of like dating my sister. So we did a 3-man
keep her locked up.
Austin, Steve, and I, and sure enough, D-Bag Steve over here got first place with Nick Mullins against me.
I love when you talk sweet to me like that.
Yeah.
It makes me feel warm and fuzzy inside.
Congrats, though. So, moving on. I don't want to talk about this anymore.
So this one really doesn't get me too excited, but it's viable because they've had some good games in recent weeks, and that's Marcus Mariota. They're at the Giants, and he's 7,100. So, again, this is kind of, if you're in a pinch, that's the only reason why I would definitely look at Nick Mullins before that, because I think the possibility of him putting up points is better, and he's $500 cheaper. So looking at the running backs, Jalen Samuels against New England, Connor's going to be out, and they're saying he's doubtful. He's $5,500. So if Connor's out, he should be in your lineup anyways. And then another guy that I liked last week too is Dalvin Cook. And they're at home against Miami, and if they're going to air the ball out, Dalvin's going to be involved in that as well. And he's $6,200. If he's going to see, we'll say 12 carries and he gets, 5 receptions, that's enough volume for me to warrant playing a guy of his talent and the way that he can get away. So 6,200, he's definitely a good play for emergency value, and even in tournament play too, without having to worry about plugging somebody in. At wide receiver, Josh Reynolds versus Philly. He's filled in reasonably well for Cooper Kupp's role. I don't know. I expect him to actually have a decent day against that defense. And he's 5,300. And then Mohamed Sanu versus Arizona at 5,400. And he's somebody. Yeah, I think he's somebody you want to look at in tournament play as well. I would be absolutely shocked if Patrick Peterson wasn't locked up on Julio Jones for the whole game. So,
and that doesn't mean that Julio's going to have a bad game. He's had some good games in the past. It just means that target share might go a little elsewhere. Right. You don't like to throw against one of the best corners in the history of football if you can help it. Now, I'm not saying Julio could still have a good game, but this does increase the value of Mohamed Sanu.
Right. And he's only 5,400. So, you definitely got to play him. And then at tight end, Mo Alley Cox, we talked about earlier with the way the Colts and Andrew Luck utilize the tight end position in the red zone. Mo Alley Cox is not going to see a lot of volume. He's very, very, very touchdown dependent. However, he's only 4,400. If you need to swap him out, or even if you see some other plays that are a little more expensive that you really like, and you're like, screw it, I'm going to punt. I'm just going to throw somebody cheap in there that has some upside to it. I think Mo Alley Cox is a guy to look at. And then even Gerald Everett, he's 4,800 against Philly. With Kupp out, they've really been mixing it up with Josh Reynolds and then Gerald Everett and the other tight end, Tyler Higbee. In the middle of the field, they've been mixing it up with those three. So he's another guy that you could look at again. Not a lot of volume, but he has an opportunity to at least see, 4 or 5 targets. And if he does, you could end up with a touchdown out of it. So
yep.
Those are just some names there. And again, super cheap, 4,800.
Yeah, not saying to play those guys. These are holy crap moments, and you got to make a quick decision, a value play where you're going to get some volume late. Now, before we jump off, just a couple reminders. Make sure you're following us on Twitter. That's where our show's going to be next week, okay? So next Sunday morning, for championship week, head over to @ESFDD. We will be periscoping there live, and you can turn notifications on, and it'll give you a beep whenever we go live on their Periscope. Also, membership over at eatsleepfantasy.com. $25 for the rest of the lineups and a bronze membership. Come make some money with us. And I gotta do a little humble brag here. I don't even know if this is a brag. I'm just crazy excited. The FanDuel $4 million fan championship is today. It's only on the main slate. I am pumped. This was my big payday last year.
You worked your way into that too.
Yeah, if you followed us from the get-go this year, just want to say thank you guys first off. Really appreciate what you guys do. We're trying to come up with new ways to constantly improve what we're doing over here at Eat Sleep Fantasy. But, we have built a way for you without a large bankroll to get into some of these big paydays through qualifiers and satellite tournaments, and we have hit repeatedly. So hopefully you guys have been doing that, and if not, just know next year, whenever we get going, we're still going to be here. We're not going anywhere, and we can help you manage your bankroll and all those different things in ways in which to return your investment, a ridiculous amount. So this week is a big week for me. I am pretty excited. Man, I'm like a little schoolgirl in so many ways, but I'm giddy, man. I'm excited. How about you, man? Closing remarks, Steve?
Yeah, I'm excited for you, man. Good luck, because you definitely did work your way into that, and I hope it pans out for you. But as always, follow us on Twitter at ESFDD. We're the boobs of fantasy football. So, go to eatsleepfantasy.com. Go there, subscribe. $5 a week for our lineups, or $25 for the rest of the season. And on top of that, you get the ESF bronze package. And again, we go all the way through the Super Bowl. I want to wish everybody tons of good luck this week. For those of you that are, playing to get into the championship week, man. I mean, this is a crucial week here. So best of luck to all you guys. And as I said last week, play the guys that got you there. You drafted your studs, play your studs. No matter what anybody else says. If you feel like you need to play them, play them. Don't overthink it. As always, you can reach out to us on Twitter. You can find me at SSPAC21. That's SSPAC21. I will field any and all questions that you guys have. And again, just good luck.
Yeah. Take care, guys. Good luck this week.